They're the nicest person you know, warm, generous, always there when you need them, the one who says yes before you finish asking, and everyone assumes that because they're kind, they're soft, because they're warm, they're pushover material, because they give so freely they must not have limits, and you didn't know what to do, laugh with them, ask if they're okay, because something felt off but you couldn't name it. Here is what most people get wrong. They think it is a defense mechanism, and then they stop thinking. Like that label explains everything. You know exactly who this is. The friend who gives you everything, but the moment you cross a line, they vanish. No drama, just gone. And almost nobody talks about what is actually happening underneath. You know exactly who these people are, though. The partner who loved you so completely that when they left completely. No half measures, just a door closing softly and permanently. The psychology behind it starts in a place that explains everything. How they learned to be nice in the first place. Let's go back, because niceness doesn't come from nowhere, and in most cases, it didn't start as a personality trait. It started as a survival strategy. Picture a kid who figured out early that love was conditional. Not dramatically, just in the quiet math of a household where helpful meant safe. When you smiled, they relaxed. When you helped, they noticed you. When you made yourself useful, you earned your place. And when you didn't, the warmth withdrew. Psychologists call it conditional positive regard. Love with terms and conditions. Not abuse, just a quiet contract. You are loved when you are good, and the kid internalizes it. Being nice isn't a choice anymore. It is the price of belonging. It is the only version of themselves that ever got rewarded. So they become fluent in other people's needs. What they want. What upsets them. What keeps the peace. And somewhere along the way, their own needs disappear. That forgetting isn't accidental. It is strategic. A kid who has needs might get rejected. A kid who only gives stays safe. That kid grows up and becomes the nicest adult in every room. But underneath the niceness is a ledger. A record of everything they gave that wasn't returned. And here is what is fascinating. That adaptation works. It works incredibly well. And that is exactly what makes it so hard to stop. And they forgive again and again, until one day the account overdraws, and the overdraw isn't gradual, it is instant, final, absolute. Psychologists call it the threshold model of tolerance. High-tolerance individuals absorb repeated offenses until a critical mass triggers sudden complete withdrawal. They go from fine to done, no gradual decline, and the gap between those two states is where every confused person ends up asking what happened. And the answer is everything happened. You just weren't paying attention. But they were. They were paying attention to every single moment you weren't. The boundary isn't the dark part. The dark part is how long they waited to draw it. How much they absorbed before the line appeared. By the time the boundary goes up, they've already processed every angle, given you more chances than you know, already grieved the version of you they hoped you'd be. They didn't snap, they calculated, and by the time they act, the decision is unshakable. That is why it looks sudden from the outside, but from the inside, it was the slowest decision they ever made. Weeks, months, sometimes years of data collection before the verdict arrives. And there is a second layer. Because the boundary isn't just about you. It is about them. It is about protecting the kindness from burning out. But they won't say it, because being right isn't the same as being effective. Correcting someone in public rarely changes minds. It just changes how they feel about you. The boundary is what makes the kindness sustainable. Without it, the nice person gives until they're empty. And an empty nice person becomes either resentful or gone. They've been that person before, said yes until yes became reflex, and no became a foreign language. Gave everything and ended up with nothing. Psychologists call it compassion fatigue. When the capacity to care gets depleted by chronic overgiving without reciprocity. And it doesn't feel like fatigue. It feels like numbness, and that numbness terrifies them. Because being kind is who they are. If they can't feel it anymore, what is left? That fear forces the wall up. In plain English, they helped until they couldn't feel anything anymore. And then they built a wall, not out of anger, out of survival. There is this weird paradox. The darker the boundary, the kinder the person usually is. The boundary isn't cruelty. It is the infrastructure holding the kindness up. Think of it like this. A river without banks floods everything. A river with banks nourishes. The banks aren't the enemy. They're what make it useful. Their kindness has structure now. It has limits. and the limits are what allow them to keep being kind without losing themselves in the process. The people inside those limits get the best version of them, not running on fumes, not obligated, present because they chose to be. Fewer people get access, but the access is real. No performance, no ledger, just presence from someone who finally has enough left to give. The people who get cut off never see that. They see the wall, the sudden absence, and they call the nice person cold or fake or two-faced. But the nice person doesn't defend themselves, because defending the boundary would require explaining the entire ledger, and the ledger is nobody's business but theirs. There is a grief in that silence. They didn't want to cut you off. They held on hoping you'd change. The boundary is the sound of that hope finally dying. They mourn it, privately, completely. They grieve the version of you they wanted. Then they close the door, and they don't open it again. Let's talk about what actually helps, because this isn't about broken people. This is about people who built something remarkable out of something terrible. The humor doesn't need to go away. That is the first thing. The ability to laugh at pain is genuinely adaptive. Research backs this up, and that withdrawal is calculated too, because they know that explaining would open a negotiation, and the decision isn't up for negotiation. Not anymore. Psychologists call it self-protective disengagement, the deliberate withdrawal from a relationship that has become a net drain on psychological resources. In real terms, they're not punishing you with silence. They're protecting themselves from the conversation they know will pull them back in. They know one conversation will undo 6 months of healing. One well-placed "I miss you" will crack the wall, so they don't give it the chance. And here is where it all comes together, because these dark boundaries aren't a contradiction to the niceness. They're the proof of it. Only someone who has given everything knows the true cost of giving. Only someone used for their kindness knows where the line needs to be. The darkness isn't darkness at all. It is clarity, the sharpest expression of self-worth a person can make. I will be kind, but I will not be consumed. That is not cold. That is not fake. That is someone who learned that love without limits isn't love. It is self-erasure, and they've already been erased once. They won't do it again. They barely recognize that person. The one who said yes to everything, who answered every call, that person almost didn't survive their own kindness. The nicest people have the darkest boundaries because they know something the rest of us learned too late. Kindness without protection isn't kindness. It is a wound waiting to reopen. And the boundary isn't the wound. The boundary is the stitching, the thing that finally stops the bleeding and lets the kindness heal into something sustainable. So the next time someone laughs while telling you something painful, don't rush to fix it. They know it is okay to cry. They always have. And I am going to keep going back to it, not because I am stuck, but because it is the one decision I don't have to think about. And that no isn't the end of your kindness. It is the beginning of the kind of kindness that doesn't cost you your life. Chosen, not compelled. If this hit home, subscribe. I'd genuinely appreciate it. And if you want to support these deep dives, hit that join button to become a channel member. Because the nicest people don't owe you access. They give it as a gift, and the day they take it back isn't betrayal. It is the first honest thing they did for themselves. And they deserve that, even if you don't understand it, especially if you don't understand it.